All right, who are you?
I'm Brian Young. I write BattleTech books and stories, and Shadowrun as well. Not as much as this guy, but
Fair, fair. I haven't met you yet, but I know that I've heard your name everywhere.
Yeah, I'm the old Brian Young.
I can see it. I
Yeah,
can see it.
yeah,
Where'd you get the time machine?
yeah. Well, it's you can't tell. I mean, that's one of those writer's secrets.
No,
Yeah,
that's fair.
yeah,
That's fair. I'll let you know whenever I
yeah,
eventually start reading or writing. I'm still figuring it out.
yeah. Yeah. A lot of people are.
I'm gonna pretend like I don't know what your name is. Who are you?
I At this point, it's a good thing I know what my name is. I mean, if I they don't even have a name tag for me. So, but I'm Michael Stackpole, and I've been doing BattleTech stuff since I think the first two novels I did came out in '88. And I've done Shadowrun stuff since before Shadowrun actually was Shadowrun. So pretty much if Facet Catalyst has a product, I drop some fiction in there just because. Uh, it's kind of like having a feral cat in your house. Find stuff everywhere.
it's going to mark up the territory no
Yeah,
matter
yeah,
what.
right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Like, oh no, this is mine now. I'm gonna do my own thing with it.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Hey, yeah, it's cute what you guys have been doing, but yeah, stand back.
Exactly.
Yeah,
No,
hold
no,
my
no, I
beer.
do love that.
Yeah,
So you've been with the property the entire time. Um,
nearly the entire time.
well, what was just to go into more of just all independently as people. What was before all this?
As far as my experience with BattleTech, or just
Yes,
um, my
that
first
or writing in general.
my first introduction to BattleTech as just a fan was the Super Nintendo game in like '93, I think. And I played the hell out of that game. And the game was interesting because it you were just a single mercenary with a mech, and you just ran around finding and negotiating contracts, and it gave you this really bizarre idea of how to travel and contracts and mech combat worked in the world. And so when I got the gig to start writing BattleTech, I went back and played the game. And after I'd started writing fiction, reading and writing fiction, I was like, this isn't how anything works at all, but it is still fun. Um, but no, I'd played a lot of the video games over the years, and then since writing, I've gotten really into the tabletop and stuff. But as far as being a writer, I've been writing. I actually started in film and doing documentary film, and I still do narrative film and things like that, and had taken sort of a left turn into journalism and had written for like Huffington Post and StarWars.com, and I still write for Slash Film and websites like that.
Mm-hmm.
And started writing novels and short stories back in like 2008, 2009. And I'd met Mike doing the Star Wars stuff, and he convinced me to put a book out that came out in 2011.
Mhm.
And I'd been working with small publishers in the early 2010s. And then by 2019, Mike had dragged me into BattleTech. So,
Yeah,
It sounds like you're pretty influential there. All right.
yeah.
yeah, it just works. No, I mean, for me, the first piece of mail I got addressed to me as an individual human being, I was 6 years old, was a rejection slip. I'd written a poem. My mother thought it was wonderful, sent it into a magazine, and they addressed the rejection slip to me. So since I was 6 years old, I have been fighting furiously to prove to publishing that they were wrong.
That's cool.
And I've met with a certain amount of success doing that. When I got out of college, I went to work for a game company in Arizona called Flying Buffalo. I'd done some freelance projects for them while I was in college,
Mhm.
and that got me into the industry. In the middle '80s, was Dragonlance had come out. Every company was figuring that they should were looking at, because of Dragonlance's success, of doing novels tied in with their products. And in '87 at Origins, I was going around caging for freelance work. I had written a novel, and talked to the guys at FASA. Quite rightly, when I walked up to the booth and said, "Hey, you guys do a novel?" So I've written a novel. They looked at me like, "Oh God, another game designer who thinks he can write," which unfortunately is still true these days.
Mhm.
That you have that you can have that painful thing, but. Um I talked to them. They sent me some material. I sent some samples, the first 6 chapters out of that novel, and a short story I had done that showed that I could handle, high tech explosions and shit like that.
Right.
Because they were interested in having me write fiction for Renegade Legion. And Then a package arrived, literally on Bastille Day, I remember, in '87. I gone to a talk radio station in Phoenix to defend role-playing games from the religious right. It was a 2-hour show. It was exhausting, and I was dealing with the second in command for the group bothered about Dungeons and Dragons. And we'd had the color worked out really, really well, or the show worked out really well.
Right.
And so it was fantastic. And I come home and here's this package on my doorstep, full of BattleTech stuff and everything else. So over the weekend, I read through the things, and Monday I got a call from Ross Babcock. He said, I read the chapters you sent. I'd like to read the rest of it. And I said, "That's great." I said, "I've read all the BattleTech stuff, that you sent me. I've got a few ideas, so if you ever need something there." And he said, "That's great, because we want you to do a trilogy." And I'm thinking, okay, this is kind of cool. He says 100,000 words in each book. You've got 9 months. Can you do it? And this is one of those moments in a freelancer's career where you
Very
realize,
make it or break it.
yeah, if you say no, you get nothing.
Mhm.
If you say yes, then you're stuck doing it. Uh, and, uh,
Fair.
and my response was, "Yeah, sure, a piece of cake." And that was that. It did take 10 months, but they had me do some other stuff in there too. So yeah.
Absolutely fair.
Yeah.
Well, what was your first project?
My first project was for BattleTech was a book called Honor's Gauntlet, and it had a little bit of that same like you have to say yes sort of panic to
Yeah.
it. Actually, I mean, 2019 is when I actually got that contract, but I'd signed an NDA maybe 2 or 3 years before, and John Helfers, the fiction editor, had been having me pitch him some ideas. He wanted me to write some stuff in the sort of the era that was current at that time.
Mhm.
And so I pitched some ideas, and he was like, "Okay, I like this, but maybe some more like this." And John's the sort of guy who object permanence sometimes isn't his strong suit.
That is a little
Um,
bit of an understatement, considering that I have just met him in person yesterday,
Yeah.
but I've been now in contact with him for about a year now.
and he's the sort of guy who like if you're at a convention like this, like you'll get lots of work done.
Oh,
But
yeah.
then in between conventions, it'll be like intermittent emails and stuff, and then all of a sudden the next convention, it's like, oh yeah, we were gonna okay, let's just roll on all of that stuff. So for like 2 or 3 years, we did this back and forth, and just as we approved a whole bunch of stuff, he said, no, 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 you got to hold off on that. We're just about to have this big creative summit that Mike and some of the other guys that we're having that we're working on. We're finally gonna move forward into the next era, which
This was September of 2019 is when this was taken.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
kind of thinking that was when that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
kind of gearing up.
so we're moving into the Ill Clan era, and it must have been September 2018.
Ye-
It was, yeah, yeah, yeah,
okay,
yeah.
yeah, you may be right. You may be right.
No,
Because, I
No,
mean,
no, it was
No,
19.
it was-
It was 19.
yeah, yeah, it
Because
was.
We came out of it and immediately went into COVID.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I get a call September 2019, and
Right.
Mike goes, "So I got some good news. You're on the board for a book. And the good news is it's the first book on the schedule. The bad news is this book is coming out in January, and it's September, and I'm like, oh.
Got it.
And we'd been working on a whole bunch of stuff. Like there was this whole other story that they'd wanted me to co-write some stuff with Mike. I think I hadn't written a novel in the BattleTech universe, and they wanted Mike to really kind of shepherd me through it because I think BattleTech's a very unique universe to write
Well, it's
in.
also huge and
Yeah.
rich, and from what I understand, like there are so many different cultures to
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
work your way around.
So Mike and I were co-writing a trilogy of Kellhounds books, and the ending was going to culminate in Calandra Kell killing Malvina Hazen.
Something like that.
Yeah, and then that changed at this summit, and they're like, no, 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 none of that is happening. But I had spent the last year going through and doing all the Kellhounds research
Right.
for this trilogy,
Mhm.
and Mike gets on the phone and goes, "How much do you know about the Jade Falcons?" And I'm like, "That they exist, but we've been doing research on the Kellhounds for the last year." And he's like, "Well, bone up. Here's the points the story needs to hit." And so I go and I start reading Jade Falcon stuff. I write up a proposal, and it gets approved really fast. The book didn't end up coming out in January. I don't think the proposal, and I had to write a chapter by chapter outline. I don't think that got approved till January, but the book came out in July 2020.
That's still
Yeah.
impressive.
It was funny because we're at the summit meeting deciding what the future of the universe, and as we used to do at FASA. Yeah, we used to do it fast and did a couple times at Whiz Kids, and then in the interregulum, it just didn't happen, and we got back to that. And Brian was not there at the meeting, but as we're figuring out, okay, who wants to do this book? And I go, Brian can do that. And so I'm just, because
Oh,
I
he
know
got it.
well, he spent 3 years, right, doing all these tryouts and everything like that. And they're going, oh, you're almost there, kid. You're almost there, kid. And it's like,
Like,
damn
no,
it,
no, he's here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember, Lauren would look at the board going, who's Brian?
Yeah.
Say, trust me, Lauren, he's got it. We're good.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm starting to realize, and so is everyone on the REM team, that it's going to take at least a year for Lauren to genuinely remember your name, and even longer than that to remember
Oh, yeah.
what you've done.
Yeah.
But
It,
at this point, he's also
hey, he's the ringmaster of the circus, So,
exactly. And at
he's
this
got
point,
a lot of act to pull together. So.
now that he knows my name and now my face and everything like that, then
Right.
he's so comfortable to talk to now.
Yeah.
Those first few months, hopping into a meeting,
Right.
just go, who is this guy? Why
Yeah.
is he here?
I think there was a little bit of suspicion with Lauren, like the first day of the creative summit we did. We did
Right.
we did a creative summit January 2023,
Yeah.
and it was like Lauren and Ray Arastia and Aaron Cahall, the line developers, and John Helfers and us and a few of the other writers.
Yeah.
And like and Lauren just, it was just like, I think he had a relationship with everyone else in the room but me, and it was my first time meeting him, and it was
Right.
it was interesting.
Yeah.
But over that weekend, I think things got a lot better, and he realized, like, oh, he actually knows what he's talking about.
It's also, I think it's one of those things that when you have this vast universe, everybody loves it, but you also know that each of the writers is going to bring their own the list of things that they want to do. They have their own agendas, and try to make sure that you have projects in there that will serve them so they'll enjoy what they're doing, but at the same time is going to serve the greater universe. It's a real interesting juggling job, and I remember at this we've done a bunch of really good work at this January summit meeting, but it hasn't quite gelled. It hasn't. Things are not 100% down, and I remember it was Lauren and me looking at one of the maps and saying, so what we're doing is we're doing this and this and this and this. And I know I began to see it. I think Lauren began to see it in terms of flows of energy. This is where both we're putting effort, but also in the universe. These are the places that have got a lot of energy, and so there's a lot of chaos, and there's means we can tell a lot of stories.
Mhm.
And as we're doing it, it's like, and then this happens right here, and it was just Lauren and me in this group. There was 12 people in the room. The other 10 are they're arguing all the different things. So Lauren and me would go, and then this happens here, and once that happens, then all these other things drop in line, and it was like, okay, kids, we figured it out. Sit down.
We solved
And then-
BattleTech.
And then all of a sudden, on the wall, we're making a list of novels, novelettes, short stories. This is what the magazine is going to be, and it was. So it was, yeah. We had solved BattleTech, and so, and that's really cool because not only are you seeing this story, but when you have everybody else is going to be working in it,
Mhm.
going, okay, yeah, I can see that too. I can see how it comes together. And when you're in those summit meetings, one of the other cool things that is that um, one, all the writers are going to be fans as well,
Mhm.
but we also know uh, that the things that we're putting together and how they get done are going to make the fans out there absolutely lose their minds. And this is at least for me, that's something that I really enjoy, to know that there is going to be somebody on a plane, or late at night at home, trying to go to sleep, reading this book and going, no, they did not. Holy shit! No, you can't stop here. And
I think one of the things that's exciting about it is like all of that stuff is starting to come out. Like
yeah,
publishing takes a long time. We had that meeting January 2023. As we record this, it's GenCon
2024, so 18
2024.
months. Yeah.
And the first book that I wrote out of something that came out of that summit isn't coming out until January 2025,
Yep.
and it's got one of those moments.
Yeah.
And the book I'm writing now that might come out next year, 2026, has one of those
Yep.
moments. And Tom Levine's book has one of those moments. I can't wait
Right.
for
right.
that moment to come out. It's exciting knowing what's coming, and being privy to those meetings and knowing the cool stuff that's going on in the universe, and seeing how it's shaping together and seeing all the clues that are getting put out there. It's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of fun working in it, and it's a lot of fun being a fan of it, because I get to see my little slice of it, but then actually getting to read everybody else's. Like,
Exactly.
Also,
I'm excited.
Nowadays we've got a lot more venues. I mean, back when I was doing the stuff with BASA and everything, we didn't have short stories because we didn't have a short story venue. We didn't have digital only publications, so novellas and any of the shorter ideas, which are great for developing characters and shoring up little things or setting up, bigger ideas, just weren't available to us. And now we have that,
Right.
and so that ends up being, I think, really, really cool, because not only do we get to tie things into the general story, but we also get to um, do little stories that are just filling out tiny pieces of the universe. So people who don't want to follow that mainline story or don't care about the politics or those things, like the Fox Patrol, they can find those stories.
Also, for any like new readers as well who don't either want to begin something so huge and
Right,
spanning,
right.
but just need a little bit, a good little push to be like,
Yeah.
oh, this is what a full story feels like, whether that be one
Yep.
or a small collection of books, and then once they dip their toes in.
And the other thing is we have more room in the universe to do fun things. I mean, in the books that I did, I created the Calhounds. They're a mercenary unit. They started out. They had money. They did not have a lot of the problems that most of the mercenary units do. They had money, and they were set up, and they were in a good position to make a success of it from the beginning. And I love the Calhounds. Written lots of stories there, but they don't have certain problems that other people do. And then 2 years ago, literally at Gen Con, I came up with an idea for the Death Kangaroos, mainly because there was a really crappy Kellhounds logo that looked like a kangaroo. Um, and I jokingly said, you've already got the merch. I'm just going to write stories for a group that, is under this particular banner. And the fun thing for me is that these guys are the anti-Kellhounds. They have no money. They really don't have a group. It's, they're not out there fighting the grand fights, I mean, they're out there stopping looters at a grocery store kind of thing. Which, when you get down to it, you're a mercenary group,
No.
you need money, you'll do these things. And now again, the universe is big enough that we can go, and we have the big stories and the noble stories and all that sort of stuff, but we can
Now
also
you can
get
go
down
in
and
and
look
fine
at it.
tune and
Yep.
all the little bits and pieces. Do y'all still get that moment whenever you're reading another author's book? That because of course you have the overarching story, but like the same feeling that a new reader gets whenever whenever they get so excited about unlocking another piece of the story. Do you still get that whenever you're reading another author's
Yeah.
book?
Most recently, Michael Ceravella's Damocles Sanction really, for me, because I'm working so much in the hinterlands, right? Like I'm working in the former Jade Falcon occupation zone. I'm working with the mercenaries in that area. I'm working with the Kellhounds and the Ark Royal Liberty Coalition in that area, the Alina Mercantile League, and the Fox Patrol's up there now. So I'm just working with a whole bunch of different factions up in that area. And Damocles Sanction is down in the Federated Suns territory, and I feel so disconnected from that part of the inner sphere. So getting to read about that, it was like getting a news flash from a totally different country,
Mhm.
and going, oh wow, there's really cool stuff going on elsewhere, and seeing how that affects things, like because it's over here, and there's stuff that affects me here, and it affects those things, so it affects these, and it's like, oh, okay, there are cascading effects that are going to change some of the things in the way I think about them. And it is really exciting to read some of that other stuff.
Plus just the general incorporation of all of those important things into your own writing. I love the idea of this of information only travels so fast. So as it grows and comes out in waves, I I absolutely love that. So different time periods you can play
Yep.
with,
Oh yeah, yeah,
being able to like have information show up somewhere at a certain point to actually influence the culture as is.
Yeah.
yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think, I look at it slightly differently because I tend to, um, had a relatively long career at this point. Um,
Fair.
and getting to see new writers like Bryan and Tom Levine and Michael Sciarvella and others coming in, what I tend to look at reading their books is to look at their development, look at the characters, look at how they are exploring people in a universe I know really, really well, and they're seeing things that I don't see just because that's not how I look at the world.
Mhm.
And so watching them bring new characters in, watching those characters go through their relationship with the universe and stuff, I think is a lot of fun and keeps it really, really vibrant. And back in the olden days, BattleTech, especially because the fiction was serving to drive the history forward, it was a very techno thriller, military history oriented universe.
Mhm.
Um, but techno thrillers died in the early '90s, and here the universe now is expanding, so it's bringing in other stories, that are not just techno thriller stories. The universe has always been big enough to handle things, but gosh, you can have detective stories, you can have all these different things which are going down, and I really just enjoy watching writers say, okay, this is where I'm going to jump
Mhm.
into the swimming pool, watch the splash I'm making. And I think that is just it's a really cool thing. And I think the other thing which we've seen, and I mean, there's no way to deny this with the Kickstarters and those things, is that we're seeing BattleTech having a much broader audience than we really thought before. You know, people, all sorts of people are finding themselves um, finding characters that they can look at and say, yeah, that's me. You know, that's how I
Mhm.
understand that. And I think the other thing is that for writers, being able to explore conflict, when you're in third grade, your third grade teacher will tell you that writers are, every character is a writer exploring an aspect of himself. Bullshit. I mean, just to put a fine point on it, that's wrong. That's a third grade teacher's understanding of what the writing process is. You
Or
know,
maybe their best way of explaining it.
well, no, I think that literally, I was trained to be a teacher, so this is methodology coming from what they learn in college.
Oh, fair.
This is when you take a course in how to teach literature. This is what you get told. Why? Because these teachers are not writers. They're people who study literature.
That is
Okay,
fair.
and if all they read in literature is self-indulgent, master of
But
fine
what do
arts
you
novels,
think he meant
which
by that?
yeah, but they're reading very autobiographical novels written by MFA students and things like that, and that is a whole genre. And so in that case, that's true. The writer is just writing about a character that is them, you know. But I'm not Morgan Kell. I'm not. I'm not.
I don't know.
I've seen some portraits, Mike.
I've
see-
never seen you and Morgan Kell in the same room, is all I'm
Okay,
saying.
I have two arms. So Morgan, not so much. So uh, uh, but being able to just sit down with a story and say, okay, I need to do something different. I want to do something that reflects this. You know, then I as a writer go out and do research. And I look at this stuff so I can get to make up a character that isn't me, but I can understand that character because I've done the research, I've read the books,
Mhm.
I've lived a long life and picked up experiences. Um, and again, in this universe now, we can do that stuff. I mean, one of the fun things for me was when they were putting together the Target box set, which was being set on Solaris during the action of Warrior on Guard, the first novel that I did.
Mm.
They came to me and said, we need a short story. It's got to be set on Solaris. It's got to be set during this time. Go. And I dove back into the book. I found a space where I could drop a story in that would tie back into the novel, just fill in from other characters' points of view, things that were going on during that time. And it's literally about a bunch of mech warriors pulling this huge con game and how they're in deep trouble now. How are they going to get out of it? And you know, for me that was a lot of fun.
Mhm.
It's not me and well, one could say that being successful as a writer is running a confidence game, um, but I
Edit
haven't
that part out.
yeah,
Don't worry about
I
it.
haven't sold a bridge to anybody recently. So, um, but now we can do that, and there are places. That story never would have been written back in the Facet days, and BattleTech never would have been in Target, back in the Facet days.
Mhm.
But now it is, and when you think about it, there are going to be people in Target that are picking up this box set because they think of it as a game, okay? And they've got this story now just to illuminate them as to what's going on with a bunch of people running a con game, diverse, all sorts of weird stuff going on. And that is makes it easier for a general audience to get in.
Mhm.
And as you were saying earlier, finding your starting points, finding your places to get in. We used to, down through the years, we used to worry about this. We would have meetings. We'd say, okay, again, back in the day, your basic buy-in on BattleTech was say $250. That's it, and that's a high buy-in if you wanted to be current. Okay, and so you have to find new portals. You have to find new on ramps to get in. And that's what we're doing, and again, it's not only with new introductory product that will get them in, but also stories that nurture the people. And again, Fox Patrol is an excellent portal story to get people in and to get them going. The Death Kangaroo stories that I'm grinding out are not portal stories. Those are stories for everybody who's deep in the universe, to
That
be
like really
going,
help flesh it out.
well, to flesh it out, and they're also going, oh, I know what that reference is to. I know what this reference is to. It's if you will, it's the made-for-TV movie of the long-running series. So the series is dead, but we're going in, and they're going, I saw that episode. Oh, I saw that episode. You know,
No,
and
I get
again,
that
it's
reference.
so cool that we get to do all of this stuff because it allows us to be a lot more creative.
No, absolutely. And kind of piggybacking off of that, out of all the stories that you've written, which one is the one that was furthest detached from yourself? What is the biggest leap that you've had to make whenever you're writing a character, and it is not necessarily the exact opposite you, but someone who doesn't share ideals, beliefs that you do.
I think the biggest departure for me is like clanners generally, especially Archer Pride in that first in Honor's Gauntlet, as a Jade Falcon who is willing to just be like, hey, I'm here. I'm gonna execute a bunch of people. Like that very clan method of justice doesn't jive with me. And I think he's a really good character, and he sort of uh, edges on that line between a psychopath like Malvina Hazen and those Falcons, but like he kind of stays on this side just a little bit with the nicer bad guys. Um,
The bad guys that feel like they can almost justify it.
yeah. And I'm interested eventually, hopefully, to take another crack at that character because I've only written him in the one book, but he was definitely the biggest departure for me and not like anything like me at all. But it was very much like that was what was so interesting about that book was what does a person who doesn't necessarily believe in the leadership but still believe in the ideals of the clan, how do they react in a situation where they're subjugating a population in order to treat that population in a way that they don't believe in as they're stealing everything they can to create supply lines for this big battle on Terra.
Mhm.
Um, it's an interesting moral quandary from people who are all sort of terrible. Um, so it was an interesting exercise. It was an interesting exploration. And again, it's like you do the research, you
Yep.
you go in and you try to understand it and make it as relatable as possible and create an interesting story. And yeah, it was very far removed from myself.
No, in that same sense, do you feel like you were writing a mentally unstable person from the perspective of a mentally stable person, or did you researched you were writing from this morally unhinged person?
So the thing with the clanners though is that like their beliefs are I mean like if you inculcate someone from birth that these are their beliefs, it's really hard to break out of those, right? Like their way of thinking, it's like the way you think about math or something. If you've got a culture that thinks in like base 6 versus base 5, it's going to be difficult for them to get out of that to think a different way. So it's not like he thinks he's a sociopath. He thinks might makes right because that's what his culture's told him from the very beginning. So he doesn't view himself that way as a bad guy. No one ever looks at themselves and goes like, I'm a villain, right? Because in their view, these Jade Falcons are like, we're going for the glory of our clan is important, and taking over Terra to protect humanity from itself is important, and it's a noble cause. So to them, they're the good guys, and Clan Wolf, uh, well, those guys just suck. And so if they take over, they're gonna make everybody soft, right? Like that's
So
what
it sounds like
Yeah.
you got pretty deep into the character.
yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah.
you have to, right?
Yeah.
No, absolutely, absolutely. No. That is exactly what I was going for too.
Yeah. Because you have to think about it from that perspective. And when I've written Clan Wolf characters, it's the same thing too, where it's just like, where are they coming from? And that's really the interesting thing about writing is that there's only one. I think this is what sometimes third grade teachers mean, or when writing instructors give you that like write what you know thing, which is on very some level it's ridiculous and on some levels it's not. And the level it's not is that like we only get access to one running internal commentary and it's ours, right?
Well, maybe for you.
Oh, well,
I have voices.
yeah. Okay, fair enough. But it's still ours. And so, what we have to do is do the research on the characters and go, okay, if my internal commentary had this happen in its childhood and that happen and this learned behavior, what would that internal commentary sound like? How would that feel like in here? So that's an aspect of myself because I'm looking at all of that through my lens and
Right.
what's going through my head and having to get through that and like how would this person think about this? Why would this person think about that? And as a writer, you have to do that with every character that enters the stage.
Yeah, I mean, when I hear writing teachers or when I'm teaching a class, you'll bring up the right what you know. And what I point out is, look, that has its limitations because you have to ask yourself, what do you know and how do you know it? And what we know and how we know it is by doing the research, by doing the interviews, talking to actual living people, as well as watching films, reading books, all of those things, until you're able to put together this mental construct that is. And Brian and I were talking about this yesterday over dinner. Um, when we are sitting in a room with a friend, we've got them there, and they can react for us.
Mhm.
But when they're not here, for us to try and figure out what their response is going to be to something, we're basically interrogating our mental construct of them. And that mental construct is generally 95% true, unless they're deceiving you and hiding something and stuff like that.
Mhm.
When we make up characters, and we put together that mental construct, we're able to deal with that mental construct and interrogate it the same way we would the mental construct we have of friends. Um, the only thing is that with our characters, we never get that chance to meet them face to face and say, is this going to work? Now, one of the other things that happens with writers, you'll talk to writers and they'll say, well, I had the story and it petered out after X number of pages and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And over and over and over again, this is because they asked the character to do something that character would not do. They didn't interrogate the mental construct. They just decided you're going to do this. And the story peters out because the mental construct is just, sitting there going, no, 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 no. They're not giving us, any of the feedback that we would want that they normally do for us to be able to write a scene.
Mhm.
And it dies. And as I tell writing students all the time, go back 3 to 5 pages. You will find the place where you made them do something they wouldn't want to do. Scrape that stuff away, start again, make the other choice. Actually listen to the characters.
Mhm.
And then the story is going to flow. So that's the key is to do that research to build them up, and then to constantly be saying, does this work? And if it doesn't work, no. Yeah, are there going to be false starts? Are there going to be times that you get it wrong? Absolutely. But that's part of the. This is,
That's what revisions are for.
yeah, yeah. This is yeah.
And
It's
it's
part
less
of the job.
about like, because like you said, it's just the character saying no at a certain
Yep.
point. And are you saying like too tough of a challenge, or are you just saying like morally they wouldn't agree to this, or
It's just let's say you define a character as being vegetarian curious. Okay,
okay.
so as we're trying to figure out where everybody's going to go to dinner,
Mhm.
um, uh, one of the suggestions is Indian, and that is moved away from. But for someone who's vegetarian curious, an Indian restaurant's going to have a lot of selections they might enjoy. Okay, so that when we go to this scene and they're in a steakhouse having to decide, what they can eat the salad, great, they can eat a dessert. And here I'm channeling, Brian's agony because we're here with St. Elmo, and I generally drag him to St. Elmo.
I've never complained.
You've never complained. This is true. It's true. I'm just projecting your internal agony.
I just eat lots of shrimp cocktails.
Yeah, well, which is not a bad choice. And so in writing that scene, you find this character being dead, resentful, not participating in the way that you would want to, because there's nothing exciting there for them. And when you build this character and you say, okay, fine, we're going to do Indian food, and they kind of come alive, you don't know going into that scene exactly what's going to go. Sure, in your notes, you know that it has to be mentioned that they have to go see their mom in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so we're going to bring up the mom trauma or whatever. But that scene may move in an entirely different direction. That factoid may get
A passing reference.
a passing reference. Literally said, "Man, I really enjoyed this meal. I got to go see my mom in 2 weeks. I'm going to be depressed when I come back. So promise me when I come back to town, we're coming here again." Okay. Suddenly, this character has come alive with that aspect. The chapter did what you needed it to do, but in doing all that character work, all of a sudden the reader now has got a better grip on that character. They know that they're going to be making certain choices, as we go forward, and it becomes easier for you as a writer to know what their choices are going to be. Everybody else goes to McDonald's. God help them, they get the filet of fish sandwich, or they order a salad, or they just order French fries. Whatever it is. But that's a decision you don't have to waste any brain sweat on anymore.
You already know where they're bound.
You already know exactly what they're going to do, such that you get plenty of brain space now to play with all the other issues you need to do in a book. And this is why, characters are so very, very important. Look, do we acknowledge that there are some readers out there that they really don't care about the internal emotional life of characters? Absolutely. Okay. And this is because sometimes you just want a happy meal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Other times you want, a high-end ribeye steak at St. Elmo. All right. But I think as a writer, it's important and incumbent upon you to learn how to write the high-end ribeye version of characters, because it gives you more opportunity for more stories than just grinding out Happy Meals every day. I also think, sure, there are going to be writers who are incapable of doing anything but happy meal stories.
There are spaces for that.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. But there are a lot of people that are also doing that. If you want a hamburger, really not hard to find a hamburger. In pretty much any place in America. All right. If you want a really good ribeye, your choices are narrowed. And so. And I just, me personally, I just want to be able to write the ribeye stuff. Because if I have to knock all the other things out and just grind out combat chapters and stuff like that, I can do that. That's a lower level of skills. I just want to push myself to be the best I possibly can. And that means exploring a lot of this other stuff.
I think, yeah, for me, the combat stuff, I find myself that if I'm not finding the combat stuff interesting, to me as the writer, I have to go back and figure out what character thing went wrong.
Oh yeah.
Why is there not enough weight here?
Yeah, right. How do I go back and actually make this weighty, and why are the stakes not there? Because if it's not, then it's not. I don't feel like it's worth my time to write if there's no character stakes there, because it's not. No, I just don't enjoy it.
No, you're right. They're constantly there has to be. In the cockpit, nobody just sits in the cockpit and says, I look to the left, I pull the trigger. I look to the right, I pull the trigger. It's like, oh fuck, son of a bitch, look at that.
Exactly.
You know, boom. You know, I didn't get enough of it. You know, let me. You know,
Mhm.
there without the emotion, there is no urgency. Okay, and there's no gradations of emergency, and that's really really important. You know, and again, you do the research, you talk to people who've been in the military. uh, People don't fight for country, they don't fight for the army, they fight for the other guy in the foxhole.
Mhm.
Okay, they fight for their buddy. I mean, that's, and again, you know, I've done tons of the research in military units in World War I, World War II. A new guy comes into a unit, they wouldn't want to learn his name because they knew he was going to die, and they didn't want to lose another friend. You know, this is why in the X-Wing books that I did in Rogue Squadron, the main character, Wedge Antilles, never addresses any of the other pilots by their first name until the end of that book when they've all survived 5 combat missions. Because statistically, you die in the first 5 combat missions. So all that, their commanding officer held all of them at arm's length because he'd already lost tons of friends. And it wasn't until they showed they could survive that he was going to begin to relate to them in a human fashion. And that was done very deliberately, and it was done based on all the research and stuff that I had done into how fighter squadrons go together, you know, in the middle of a long war and all of those things. You know, just so you know, anybody who wants to sit out there and say, "Oh, these guys are just writing war porn," it's like, no, no. You know, we actually do the research. We study the characters.
Mhm.
You know, Brian has been absolutely bored to tears with the fact that I have been, you know, over the last 3 days devouring a book written by a POW, World War I POW who was trapped in a prison camp in Anatolia, and how he and a buddy hatched a totally bizarre plot to get out of Turkey and back to England. And you know, are there nuts and bolts things of what they did to do this escape? Absolutely. But the more fun thing is who they were as characters, how they got this thing done, what it revealed about personalities, about all sorts of other people. That's what was interesting in it.
It's interesting. I think reading a lot of war fiction and nonfiction, um, I think it was either Hemingway or Vonnegut. One of them was talking about how like all fiction about war, whether it's military, sci-fi, or whatever, is sort of, if it's done well, is sort of inherently anti-war because
Yep, yep, yep,
you're showing people the effects of that on characters,
yep.
on people. And if you're doing it accurately, nobody comes out better for having to kill someone
Right,
or watch someone they care about
right.
die or any of that.
Yep,
And I think BattleTech has been really good for that sort of thing.
sure, sure.
And when when a BattleTech story has been particularly affecting to me, it's been because of the characters
Yep.
and how the combat affects them rather than the combat itself.
Mhm.
Even though reading the combat, uh, is fun to take to the tabletop too.
Right.
But I was talking to Randall actually. Randall came out for an operation, reunification tour in Salt Lake City in my hometown. He was talking about one of the things that makes BattleTech special among war games is that you'll talk to people recounting other war games, and it's always very much mechanics based. Like, oh, I rolled this and I did this with this rule or
Right,
whatever.
right.
But when people talk about BattleTech, it's like, oh, I got that headshot,
Yep,
or I
yep.
did this, or my character did that. It's very story based. It's very
Yeah.
character based, and I think BattleTech hits in a different way because the characters and the stories matter differently.
It's very character forward.
Yeah.
And I think that is great. You're right. It doesn't glorify war. It glorifies heroism and sacrifice,
Yeah.
and that is the singular this singular difference from the work that we categorize as war porn.
Yeah.
I'd say that that would be more like looking at like a full empire or things like that, and like they're the things that people talk about the good of war is like all from what I've seen is economy stuff like that,
Right.
which however you personally believe, um, that would be the only way for it to come out looking like a good thing. Like, oh, we prevailed, but whenever you go deep
Well,
and
here's,
look at your
here's the question: what are things worth killing someone else for? And I think and philosophers have opined that as you boil things down, defending life, defending freedom, are really the only things worth killing for. I mean, gold is transitory, glory, who cares?
The clans.
Well, the clans do, and yet, as those books were written, clans didn't win.
Yeah.
Clans did not prevail.
Yeah.
The people who prevailed were the ones that were fighting to preserve life, preserve freedom.
you because you fight in a
Yeah.
different way.
Yeah.
I think that's what's making the Ill Clan era so interesting now is that you've got some of the clans that got spanked, right? Like I think the Jade Falcons now in
Mhm.
particular, those that were left behind looking at a legacy of, you know, genocide and war crimes and all of these things and going like, we weren't really protecting humanity. Like
Right.
our charge was, how do we reconcile that with what we thought we were doing, um, and having them try to figure out what that looks like and maintain the honor and the glory they thought they were going for. And that's, uh, I don't think they realized with their upbringings how much cognitive dissonance that they were raised with, and now it's starting to hit them right between the eyes because they're fighting for their own survival in a way they never have before.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I think the Ill Clan era is, there's so many interesting stories going on
Yep.
with all the different clans and all the different factions right now. Uh, it's just really fascinating, like how many human stories that you can tell in this sci-fi setting because it's so far removed from today that you can still hold that mirror up to humanity with those what ifs in really interesting ways, I think.
I think one of the other fun things, just from the writer's side of working in the universe, is being able to. Uh, I was working on a story last week, and shot Brian a note, the note was, in case you wanted to know, in 3146, BattleTech Universe's equivalent of Tom Cruise is so and so, and Brian says, "Great, what the hell are you writing?"
That was literally my response, word for word.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was being able to work with the other authors and say, hey, look, I've just created this character. If you want to use them, or Brian had created the Cathedral of Saint Michael on Galatea, which is a place where a lot of the mercenary units have got memorials. He created it. I've been able to use it in a couple of pieces, and um, having these shared spaces as little touchstones, being able to toss things back and forth between stories. One, it's a lot of fun. It's the same sort of fun that we had back in the early days of BattleTech, and then when I was working in Star Wars. Very much the same thing. Field a call from Tim Zahn, and he says, "Hey, I'm doing this. Can you got any use for this, or can you set this up, or and that was matter of fact, there was recently because when this is being done, we just had the it's not The Apprentice. What the hell? What was the Star Wars thing that just finished?
The Acolyte.
The Acolyte. There we go. Acolyte, Protege. One of those.
Yeah.
But in the Acolyte, this cortosis ore that stops lightsabers was mentioned. And I mean, Brian shot me a note saying, hey, they mentioned your cortosis ore. And it's like, not mine, that was Tim's. but it had come out in my book, I Jedi first. Tim had invented it for his book.
Mhm.
He mentioned it to me. I said I can use it, put it into iJedi. iJedi hits print before his book does. So, unbeknownst to me, the Wikipedia is listing me as the creator of this stuff. I was like, that's all Tim. I just sat. He spiked the ball. That was.
No, it's been fun. Like you sent me that text about the Tom Cruise equivalent.
Yeah.
And I think that was like a week ago, and I've been chewing on it, and I'm like, where am I going to have room to use this? And as I was doing my writing yesterday, I'm working on um, a novel right now set in 3152, and all of a sudden the chapter's just like, oh, here's how I use this guy. Here's how I use this, and that all of a sudden it's this great extra centerpiece in this chapter to use that reference. Or yeah, it's been nice to see St. Mike's
Yeah.
back and forth, and Mike and I share a document that has all the booze in the universe, and so we've been inventing booze
Yeah.
and passing it back and forth. And as I invent one, I'll add it to the list, and as he invents one, it'll get added to the list.
Yeah.
And so there's some consistency. Uh, the swill of the universe is like a wolf's paw.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I've been using wolf's paw a lot
I'd have me
lately.
some Wolf's Paw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah. So it's but again, that creative community, being able to do this stuff, being excited for each other's work, just makes it more and more fun to watch the universe grow and to be part of making it grow, so that we've got that core line, that people can follow if following the history is exactly what they want to do. But we've also got little satellite areas where we can tie things in back and forth, and it just makes the universe a lot more real. So it's and the other thing, which is a lot of fun, of course, is that because we were saying at the top of this, things take so long to get to,
Yeah.
any one place. There are videos that are being shown as brand new on Worlds. They were filmed a century ago, but it's brand new to these guys, and so.
Well, and plus just the idea of each planet. This is from just any given YouTube theory video.
Sure.
The idea that any one world's understanding of another world that is, so far away,
Oh yeah, yeah.
they have to think that they are at least, however long away, 150
Oh, yeah,
years,
yeah.
like in the past of how far they've actually been able to develop.
Oh yeah.
We've been talking a lot about the pop culture of
Yeah.
each planet, right? How like there's no one consistent pop culture across BattleTech, and how every planet, has their equivalent to the Beatles or whatever. And
Right.
like so that means, and there's thousands of planets, right? So you've got thousands of different pop cultures and stuff, and how one is going to play on one and one's going to play on another. And
Yeah.
trying to imagine based on who settled the planet and how it evolved and what's around on the planet, what the pop culture or what the culture of that planet's going to be like. I did a serial novel starring the Fox Patrol in Shrapnel, and it just wrapped up in issue 16, and I'm told we're collecting it
Oh good.
in sometime this year. It's getting collected. It's called Lone Wolf and Fox, but it's set on Alyena, which was settled in the text, in the history. Who I don't know who decided that it was settled, but it was settled by Italian and Indian immigrants. And so me sitting down going like, okay, so the planet's gonna have a mix of names for
Mhm.
cities and things that are a mix of Italian and Indian, and all the names of people are going to be mixes of those, plus there's been clanners there for 100 years. So
Yeah.
like how does that affect things? And what is the cuisine like based on what the planet's ecosystem is, plus what the immigrants brought, and like actually having to sit down and think about those things is so fun. And what sort of things come from Indian culture and Italian culture as far as like entertainment, and how would those play against each other on a planet like that? It's um, I really love getting to flex those like sort of sci-fi imagination muscles
Yeah.
as far as the social stuff
Mhm.
as far as BattleTech, which I don't think people when they read BattleTech, I think a lot of people just look at the mechs and stuff and don't realize how much science fiction is actually underneath it in places like that.
Right. Right.
And I mean, especially if you're just talking about just how long any given people have been around
Yeah,
and how much influence they have.
that was one of the things about St. Michael's on Galatea. Like Galatea has been settled for what, like 1,000 years in the universe, something
So,
like that.
well,
Like, well, no,
not
like
quite.
something
Yeah.
like 700 years or
Yeah.
something. And I was thinking like Notre Dame is like 800 years old, and I was like, why, if there's probably a building there, a cathedral that's 300 or 400 years old,
Yep.
right? So what would that look like in a time where they want it to look like a cathedral, but St. Michael's now that they'll just add like, oh, he's a patron saint of mech warriors now too, and
Sure.
so they've got the stone carvings not just of the saints but also mechs and stuff around the building
Yeah.
and things like that, trying to imagine like what that would look like in that culture, worshiping mechs, devoted to a patron saint who's now added mech warriors to
Mhm.
uh, his things that he's in charge of, and yeah, having the mercenaries and stuff there and be honored and stuff. And it's just like, okay, that's how I think that would work, and just a little thing like that, and adding that distance to it, because you walk into Notre Dame. I don't know if have either of you been to Notre Dame. It's like it's pretty amazing walking into a
Mhm.
building and it's like, oh, this is older than my country, like by a
Oh
damn
yeah.
sight.
Yeah. Okay.
Like,
It's not too hard in Europe to walk into a building that's
yeah,
older than
No,
the
very
United
true, very
States.
true.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember like an old post about someone celebrating the 250th year of their school, and someone, obviously an American, goes, "What are you talking about?" Or like that doesn't even line up historically. Obviously, you're making this up, and they're like, "Not everything happens
Yeah.
in
yeah.
America. I'm sorry to tell you this."
Yeah.
But we have already gone just a little bit past.
No. Okay.
Uh, any final words? Any potential teasers? Anything that we can squeeze out of you?
I've got the collection of Lone Wolf and Fox coming sometime this year, hopefully, and then next year, I'm told in January we've got Voidbreaker, which is the story of the Sea Foxes and Tucker Harwell coming out, and then Mike and I are working on the graphic novels, the BattleTech graphic novels, and I'm hard at work on some more books that I'm not going to tease yet.
And then apparently I've got 4 long novellas coming out next year, which Brian knew about before I did. So yeah, and just
Fair enough. And I'm dedicating this, I'm dedicating you to this right now, a new book every month, 2025, right?
how much is it worth to you?
I
You
don't have
know,
enough money.
if John sent the contracts over,
No kidding. No kidding.
No, that's fair. I think I actually meet with them later on today.
yeah,
So,
There you go.
mhm.
So just one of your questions you'd be asking them is, where's their contracts to?
yeah, where's
Get them their contracts.
yeah.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I ended up sending a whole group over to Lauren just to push him on something that I needed pushed on. So,
There you go.
mhm.
Yeah. That's the way things get done in this industry.
But all right, thank you so much for
You're more than
coming.
welcome.
And I'm hoping that we don't have. I think it's only one person coming in at two, so not a small collection out there.
All right.
Beautiful.